Daniel Ridgway stood in his kitchen, watching his 13-year-old nephew Oliver pick at a sandwich with the same mechanical precision he'd once used to clean rifle barrels. 3 days had passed since James's funeral, and the kid hadn't said more than 10 words total. "You don't have to eat it if you don't want it," Daniel said, setting his coffee mug down harder than necessary. The sound made Oliver flinch. "Sorry." Oliver's voice came out as a whisper. "I'm not hungry." Daniel studied the boy's face. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his skin held a gray pallor that reminded Daniel of trauma victims he'd treated overseas. Oliver wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the August heat, and his hands trembled slightly as he pushed the plate away. "When's the last time you showered, kid?" Oliver's head snapped up, panic flashing across his features. "I'm clean. I promise I'm clean. That's not what I asked. I clean myself every night. I use the wipes. I use the alcohol. I burn it all out just like—" Oliver stopped abruptly, his face going pale. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Just like what?" "Nothing. Can I go to my room?" Before Daniel could respond, Oliver was gone, his footsteps quick and nervous down the hallway. Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at the untouched sandwich and trying to make sense of what he'd just heard. That evening, Daniel knocked on Oliver's door. "Can I come in?" "1 second." The response came too quickly, followed by rustling sounds and what sounded like something being shoved under the bed. When Oliver finally opened the door, Daniel caught a sharp chemical smell that made his nose burn. Rubbing alcohol, strong enough to sterilize surgical equipment. "Everything okay in here?" Oliver nodded quickly, but his eyes darted toward the bed. "Just doing homework." Daniel glanced at the desk. No books, no papers, just a lamp throwing weak light across an empty surface. "What subject?" "Math." "Where's your textbook?" Oliver's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I forgot it at school." Daniel had been a medic for 12 years before becoming a contractor. He'd learned to read the signs of trauma, the way people's bodies betrayed their lives. Oliver's rapid breathing, the way he kept his arms pressed against his sides, the chemical smell clinging to his clothes, it all pointed to something darker than grief. "Oliver, I need you to roll up your sleeves." "What?" "What?" "Because I'm worried about you. Your dad asked me to take care of you, and I can't do that if you're hiding things from me." "I'm not hiding anything." "Then roll up your sleeves." Oliver backed away until his legs hit the bed. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because you'll see." Daniel's jaw tightened. "See what?" Instead of answering, Oliver burst into tears. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. Daniel stepped forward and gently took the boy's wrist. Oliver didn't resist as Daniel pushed up the sleeve of his shirt. Red, angry marks covered Oliver's forearm. Some were old, faded to brown. Others looked fresh, the skin raw and inflamed. They formed a pattern deliberate, methodical, like someone had been using his arm as a testing ground. Jesus Christ. Daniel felt his hands shake as he examined the marks. "Who did this to you?" Oliver wiped his nose with his free hand. "I did it to myself. I have to." She said, "I have to burn the filth out or it spreads." "Who said that?" "Mom." Daniel's blood turned to ice water. "Your mother did this. She taught me how to clean properly. Soap doesn't work on sin. You have to use alcohol. You have to burn it out completely or it gets deeper." Daniel forced himself to speak calmly. "Show me how you clean yourself." Oliver hesitated, then reached under his bed and pulled out a plastic bag. Inside were cotton pads, a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and several washcloths stained brown with what looked like dried blood. "Every night before bed. Arms first, then legs, then back. I can't reach all of my back, so sometimes I miss spots." Oliver's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was describing how to tie his shoes. "How long has this been going on?" "Since I was 10. That's when Mom said I was old enough to understand about the filth." Daniel took the bag from Oliver's hands. "You're not doing this anymore." "But I have to. If I don't clean properly, the sin spreads. It gets in the air and makes other people sick. Listen to me." Daniel knelt down so he was at eye level with the boy. "There is no sin in your skin. There is no filth that needs to be burned out. Your mother lied to you." Oliver shook his head violently. "No, she knows about these things. She studied. She read books." "What kind of books?" "Religious books. Medical books. She said boys carry different kinds of filth than girls. She said it's because of what boys think about. Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. Oliver, you're 13 years old. You're not supposed to think about anything except homework and video games. But I do think about things. Bad things. And when I think about them, I can feel the filth spreading. What kind of things? Oliver's face flushed red. Girls. Sometimes I think about girls, and I get feelings. And Mom said those feelings are the filth trying to get out. Daniel closed his eyes and counted to 10. When he opened them, Oliver was watching him with the desperate expression of someone waiting for judgment. Those feelings are normal. Every boy your age has them. They're not filth, and they're not sin. They're just part of growing up. But Mom said, your mother was wrong. The words hung in the air between them. Oliver stared at Daniel with wide eyes, like he'd just been told the sky was actually green. She was wrong about a lot of things, Daniel continued. And I'm going to prove it to you. Daniel waited until Oliver was asleep before making the call. He sat in his truck outside the house, cell phone pressed to his ear, listening to the ringtone that seemed to go on forever. Hello, Mary, it's Daniel. A pause. Oh, hello, Daniel. How is Oliver settling in? Her voice was different than he remembered from the funeral. Lighter, almost cheerful. He's having a hard time. We need to talk about some things. What kind of things? The marks on his arms. The chemical burns. The way he flinches every time someone mentions a shower. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Oliver has always been a sensitive boy. He tends to hurt himself when he's upset. I've been working with doctors to help him through it. What doctors? That's private medical information. I'm his guardian now. Nothing about his health is private from me. Actually, Daniel, I've been thinking about that. Oliver should be with his mother during this difficult time. I'm going to petition the court for custody. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. Like hell you are. I'm his mother. I know what's best for him. You know what's best for him? Daniel's voice rose. You taught a 10-year-old boy to burn his own skin because you convinced him he was dirty. You told him normal feelings were sin. I have no idea what stories he's been telling you, but Oliver has a very active imagination. He's been seeing a therapist for his lying problem. What therapist? Dr. Elizabeth Crenshaw. She's been helping Oliver work through his tendency to fabricate stories for attention. Daniel pulled out a pen and wrote the name on his palm. I want her contact information. I'll have to check with her first. Patient confidentiality and all that. Mary, I want to be very clear about something. If I find out you've been hurting that boy, I will destroy you. Are you threatening me? I'm making you a promise. The line went dead. Daniel sat in his truck for a long time, staring at the name written on his palm. Then he dialed another number. Ridgway County Sheriff's Department. This is Daniel Ridgway. I need to speak to someone about my brother's death. Hold on, sir. A few minutes later, a gruff voice came on the line. This is Detective Morrison. I handled your brother's case. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. I have some questions about the circumstances. Mr. Ridgway, I know this is difficult, but the investigation is closed. Your brother's death was ruled accidental. I've been looking at the autopsy report. The bruising pattern doesn't match a fall downstairs. Sir, I understand you're grieving, but second-guessing the medical examiner isn't going to bring your brother back. The bruises on his ribs are consistent with being punched. The ones on his arms look like defensive wounds. Where did you get a copy of the autopsy report? I requested it. I have a right to see it. Detective Morrison sighed. Mr. Ridgway, sometimes people see what they want to see. Your brother had a history of drinking. He fell down a flight of stairs after a night out. It's tragic, but it happens. What about the voicemail he left me 2 days before he died? What voicemail? Daniel pulled out his phone and played the message on speaker. James's voice filled the truck, slurred but urgent. Dan, she's changing. I'm scared for Oliver. If anything happens to me, don't let her take him. Please. Silence on the other end of the line. Detective, that wasn't in the original report, because nobody bothered to check his phone records. Nobody talked to his family. Nobody looked beyond the obvious. Mr. Ridgway, if you have evidence of foul play, you need to bring it to the station. I plan to. But first, I need to know why the investigation was closed so quickly. I can't discuss ongoing. The investigation is closed. You just said so. Another pause. Your brother's wife provided a statement. She said he'd been drinking heavily since losing his job. She said he'd been talking about suicide. James didn't lose his job. He quit because Mary was making him come home during lunch breaks to check on Oliver. She didn't mention that. I'm sure she didn't. What else did she not mention? Sir, I think you should come in tomorrow morning. Bring the voicemail. Bring anything else you think might be relevant. I'll be there at 9. Daniel hung up and stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. James had been trying to protect Oliver. He'd known something was wrong, and he'd died trying to save his son. Now it was Daniel's turn. At T2 in the morning, Daniel heard movement in the hallway. Soft footsteps, careful not to wake anyone. He'd been lying in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the conversation with Detective Morrison, that he got up and crept to his bedroom door, opening it just enough to see down the hall. Oliver's door was closed, but light leaked out from underneath. Daniel waited, listening to a soft scraping sound, like someone dragging something across the floor. Daniel moved closer to Oliver's door. The chemical smell was stronger now, sharp enough to make his eyes water. He pressed his ear to the door and heard Oliver's voice, barely audible. Arms first. Clean the sin out. Burn it all out. Daniel's stomach clenched. He turned the doorknob slowly, praying it wouldn't creak. Oliver sat on the floor beside his bed, shirtless, with a bag of supplies spread out around him. His back was to the door, and Daniel could see more marks covering his shoulder blades and spine. Some were old scars, white and raised. Others were fresh, the skin red and inflamed. Oliver held a cotton pad soaked in rubbing alcohol. He pressed it against a mark on his forearm and held it there, his body rigid with pain. Burns the filth out, Oliver whispered. Clean it all out. Daniel watched, horrified, as Oliver moved the pad to another mark. The boy's entire body shook, but he didn't make a sound. That's enough. Oliver spun around, dropping the cotton pad. His face was streaked with tears, and his breathing came in short gasps. I wasn't done. I have to finish. Daniel stepped into the room and knelt beside Oliver. No, you don't. Yes, I do. If I don't finish, the sin spreads. It gets in the air and makes other people sick. Oliver, look at me. The boy's eyes were glassy, unfocused. He was in some kind of trance, going through motions he'd repeated hundreds of times. I'm looking. Do I look sick to you? What? You've been living here for 3 days. You've been around me constantly. If this imaginary sin could spread through the air, wouldn't I be sick by now? Oliver blinked, confusion replacing the glazed look in his eyes. I guess. And what about at school? You're around other kids all day. Are they getting sick? No. Then maybe your mother was wrong about the sin spreading. Oliver shook his head. She knows about these things. She studied. What did she study? Medical books. Religious books. She has a whole library. Daniel picked up the bottle of rubbing alcohol and read the label. This is 90% isopropyl alcohol. It's meant for cleaning wounds, not burning skin. But Mom said, I know what she said, but I'm a medic, Oliver. I've used this stuff to clean actual wounds on soldiers who were bleeding to death. It's not meant to be held against healthy skin. Oliver looked down at his arms, seeing the marks as if for the first time. Then why does it hurt so much? Because it's burning you. Because you're hurting yourself. But I have to. I have to clean the sin out. Daniel reached out and gently took the bottle from Oliver's hands. What if I told you there is no sin? What if I told you that everything your mother taught you about this was a lie? Then, Oliver's voice cracked. Then I've been hurting myself for nothing. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Oliver stared at his arms, at the fresh burns and old scars. She said boys carry filth in their skin. She said it's because of what boys think about. And what do you think about? Sometimes I think about girls. Sometimes I think about kissing someone. And when I think about it, I can feel the filth spreading. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. Oliver, every boy your age thinks about girls. It's normal. It's healthy. It's part of growing up. But Mom said, your mother lied to you. She made you believe that normal feelings were evil so she could control you. Oliver was crying now, deep sobs that shook his entire body. Why would she do that? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Daniel gathered up the cotton pads and alcohol, stuffing them back into the bag. This stops now. No more burning. No more chemicals. No more hurting yourself. But what if the sin spreads? It won't, because there is no sin. Oliver looked up at him with desperate eyes. How do you know? Because I've seen real sin, kid. I've seen what happens when people actually do evil things. And trust me, it doesn't live in your skin. Daniel helped Oliver to his feet and handed him a clean shirt. Tomorrow, we're going to see a doctor. A real doctor. And we're going to start figuring out how to help you heal. What if Mom finds out? Let me worry about your mother. Oliver pulled on a shirt and climbed into bed. Daniel tucked the blanket around him like James used to do when they were kids. Uncle Dan. Yeah, I'm scared. I know. But you're safe now. And I promise you, I will never let anyone hurt you again. Daniel meant every word. As he walked back to his room, he was already planning his next move. He had photos of Oliver's injuries on his phone. He had the voicemail from James. He had a clear pattern of abuse. Now he just needed to build a case that would put Mary away for good. Daniel sat across from Kendra Alcott in her downtown office, watching her flip through photos of Oliver's injuries. The lawyer was younger than he'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that reminded him of the better officers he'd served under. This is systematic abuse, Kendra said, setting down the photos. But proving it in court is going to be complex. What do you mean? Your nephew has been conditioned to believe he was hurting himself for his own good. His mother can argue that she was treating a self-harm disorder, not causing it. Daniel leaned forward. You saw the marks. Those aren't random cuts or scratches. They're deliberate chemical burns applied in a pattern. I agree, but we need more than photos and testimony from a traumatized child. We need documentation, medical records, proof that this was intentional abuse, not misguided treatment. What kind of proof? Kendra pulled out a legal pad and started writing. First, we need Oliver's complete medical history. Every doctor visit, every prescription, every treatment. If Mary was really trying to help him, there should be records of legitimate medical consultations. And if there aren't, then we got our first piece of evidence that this wasn't medical treatment. Daniel nodded. What else? We need witness testimony. Has Oliver ever mentioned this to anyone? Teachers, friends, relatives? I don't know. He's been pretty isolated. What about his sister? Naomi, right? She's 11. Yeah, she lives with Mary. We need to talk to her. If Mary was abusing Oliver, there's a good chance Naomi witnessed it. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. You think she's hurting Naomi too? I think we need to find out. Child abusers don't usually limit themselves to one victim. Kendra continued writing. We also need to establish a pattern of control and manipulation. You mentioned that Oliver's father quit his job because Mary was making him come home during lunch breaks. That's what James told me. We need to document that. Employment records, witness statements from his co-workers, anything that shows Mary was exerting unusual control over the family. James is dead. I know, but other people might have noticed the pattern. We need to find them. Daniel pulled out his phone and played the voicemail from James. Kendra listened intently, her expression growing darker with each word. This is good, she said when it finished. It establishes that James was concerned about Oliver's safety and that he suspected Mary was the threat. The police didn't think it was important. The police were investigating an accidental death. We're building a case for systematic child abuse. Different standards of evidence. Kendra leaned back in her chair. Daniel, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay, are you prepared for what this is going to cost? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about what it's going to do to Oliver and Naomi to have their mother's abuse exposed in court. Daniel didn't hesitate. Oliver burns himself with rubbing alcohol every night because he thinks his normal feelings are sin. If that's not worth fighting for, then nothing is. And if Mary fights back? If she accuses you of coaching Oliver to lie? If she tries to paint you as an unfit guardian? Then we'll deal with it. Kendra smiled for the first time since he'd walked into her office. Good, because she's going to throw everything she has at you. She stood up and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. I've handled cases like this before. The abuser always claims they were trying to help. They always have explanations for everything. They always try to make the victim look like the problem. So how do we win? We document everything. We build a case so solid that Mary can't wiggle out of it. And we make sure that every piece of evidence points to the same conclusion. Systematic, intentional abuse. Daniel watched Kendra spread papers across her desk. Where do we start? We start with Oliver's medical records. I'm going to need you to sign some forms so I can request them from his pediatrician. What if the doctor won't release them? Then we'll get a court order. But most doctors will cooperate when they understand we're investigating child abuse. Daniel signed the forms, his handwriting steady despite the anger building in his chest. How long is this going to take? Depends on what we find. If we can prove Mary was medicating Oliver without proper medical supervision, we might be able to get her arrested within a few weeks. Medicating him. You said Oliver mentioned his mother reading medical books. You said she had explanations for everything. That suggests she might have been treating him with actual medications, not just the alcohol burns. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of medications? Anti-anxiety drugs, antidepressants, maybe even antipsychotics if she was really convinced he was mentally ill. She could do that, just give him prescription drugs. If she had access to them, yes. And if she was filling prescriptions under false pretenses, that's multiple felonies. Kendra gathered up the papers and put them in a new folder with Daniel's name on it. I'm going to start with the medical records. While I'm doing that, I want to talk to Oliver about whether his mother ever gave him pills or liquid medications. What if he doesn't remember? Then we'll find other ways to prove it. Pharmacy records, insurance claims, anything that shows Mary was obtaining medications for a child. Daniel stood up, feeling lighter than he had in days. Finally, they had a plan. What about Naomi? When do we talk to her? Carefully. We can't just grab her and start asking questions. We need to do it through proper channels, with a trained child psychologist present. How do we arrange that? Leave that to me. I have contacts in the family court system. We'll set up a supervised visit where Naomi can talk to a therapist without Mary being present. Daniel shook hands with Kendra, her grip firm and confident. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. But we're going to fight, and we're going to use every legal tool available to protect those kids. As Daniel left the law office, he pulled out his phone and dialed Oliver's school. It was time to start asking questions about Mary's involvement in her son's education, and it was time to find out what other secrets she'd been keeping. The cabin sat 20 miles outside of town, surrounded by pine trees and the kind of silence that made city people nervous. Daniel had bought it years ago as a retreat, a place to decompress after particularly difficult contracts. Now, it was serving a different purpose. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and eating pancakes like she hadn't seen food in days. She was smaller than Oliver, with the same dark hair and serious eyes. But where Oliver carried himself like a beaten dog, Naomi seemed hyper-aware of everything around her. "These are really good," she said, syrup dripping down her chin. "Thanks. My mom's recipe. Mom doesn't make pancakes anymore. She says sugar makes kids hyper." Daniel set down his coffee cup. "What does she make for breakfast?" "Oatmeal. Plain oatmeal. Sometimes with a little bit of honey if Oliver's been good." "What does Oliver have to do to be good?" Naomi's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Clean himself properly. Follow the rules. Not think bad thoughts." "What kind of rules?" "The cleaning rules. The quiet rules. The touching rules." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. "What are the touching rules?" "Boys can't touch girls. Girls can't touch boys. Not even family touching. Mom says it spreads germs." "What about hugs?" "Hugs are okay sometimes, but only if Mom says it's okay. And only if Oliver has been clean for a whole week." Daniel watched Naomi eat her pancakes, trying to process what she was telling him. "Naomi, did Oliver ever tell you why he has to clean himself?" "Because boys carry filth in their skin. It's different from girl filth. Boy filth is deeper and harder to clean out." "Did your mom tell you that?" "She tells me lots of things. She says I'm lucky to be a girl because girl filth is easier to clean. But I still have to be careful around Oliver." "Careful how?" "I have to watch him. I have to make sure he's cleaning properly. Sometimes Mom makes me great as cleaning." Daniel set down his coffee cup harder than he intended. "What do you mean, great as cleaning?" "Like at school. I have to look at his arms and back and give him a grade. A is for perfectly clean. F is for still dirty. What happens if he gets an F? He has to clean again. Sometimes he has to clean 3 or 4 times before he gets a good grade. And you had to watch him do this." Naomi nodded, her expression matter of fact. Mom says it's important for me to learn how to tell if someone is clean. She says I'll need to know when I'm older. Daniel felt sick. Naomi, how long has this been going on? Since Oliver was 10. That's when Mom said he was old enough to understand about boy filth. And you've been grading his cleaning since then? Yeah, I'm good at it. I can tell when he misses spots. Daniel leaned forward. Naomi, I need to ask you something important. Has your mom ever hurt you? Hurt me how? Has she ever hit you? Has she ever made you clean yourself with alcohol like Oliver does? Naomi shook her head. No. Mom says girl filth is different. We don't need alcohol. Just regular soap and scrubbing. But she's never hurt you. Not like Oliver. But sometimes she locks me in the bathroom with him when he's cleaning. She says I need to learn what happens to kids who don't follow the rules. She locks you in the bathroom, just for a few hours, until Oliver gets all the filth out. Sometimes he cries, but Mom says that's just the filth leaving his body. Daniel stood up and walked to the window, trying to control his breathing. Outside, Dr. Sarah Chun was setting up her equipment in the living room. The child psychologist had driven up from the city specifically for this conversation. Naomi, Daniel said, turning back to her. I want you to meet someone. Her name is Dr. Chun, and she's really good at talking to kids about difficult things. Is she going to ask me about Mom? Probably. Is that okay? Naomi considered this. Will you be here? If you want me to be. Okay, but I don't want to get in trouble for talking about family things. You won't get in trouble. I promise. Dr. Chun was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Naomi at ease. She had Naomi draw pictures while they talked, a technique that helped children process difficult emotions. Can you draw me a picture of your house? Dr. Chun asked. Naomi picked up a crayon and started drawing. This is the living room. This is the kitchen. This is the bathroom where Oliver cleans himself. Tell me about the bathroom. It's where Oliver has to go when he's been bad. Mom locks the door, so he can't come out until he's clean. How long does he stay in there? Sometimes all night. Sometimes just a few hours. It depends on how dirty he is. Dr. Martinez made notes on her pad. And you said your mom makes you watch sometimes? Yeah. She says I need to learn how to tell if someone is really clean. What does Oliver do when he's in the bathroom? Naomi switched to a red crayon and started drawing marks on the stick figure she'd labeled Oliver. He uses the cotton balls and the alcohol. He puts them on his arms and back and holds them there until they stop burning. Does he ever ask for help? Sometimes. But Mom says if I help him, then I'll get dirty too. What do you do when he asks for help? I tell him to be brave. I tell him it will be over soon. Sometimes I count to help him know how long to hold the cotton balls. Dr. Martinez's pen stopped moving. You count for him? Yeah, Mom taught me. I count to 60 for each spot. That's how long it takes to burn all the filth out. Daniel felt his hands clench in a fist. He walked to the kitchen and called Kendra. We need to move faster, he said when she answered. What did you find out? Mary's been forcing Naomi to participate in Oliver's abuse. She's been using her as a monitor to make sure Oliver was hurting himself properly. Jesus Christ. And she's been locking him in the bathroom for hours at a time, making him burn himself until Naomi gave him a passing grade. That's imprisonment and child endangerment. We can arrest her today if we have proper documentation. Dr. Chun is documenting everything. Naomi's telling her things that will make your hair stand on end. Good. I got the medical records from Oliver's pediatrician. You're going to want to see them. What did you find? Mary's been filling prescriptions for anti-anxiety medication using James's name and Oliver's birth date. She's been medicating that boy for 3 years without proper medical supervision. Daniel felt the room spin. What kind of medication? Clonazepam. It's a powerful anti-anxiety drug. She was giving him adult doses. How did she get prescriptions? She was using expired prescription pads from James's old family doctor. The pharmacy didn't catch it because she was spreading the prescriptions across multiple locations. That's fraud. That's multiple felonies. Prescription fraud, child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license. Daniel watched through the window as Dr. Martinez continued talking to Naomi. The little girl was drawing another picture, this one showing a stick figure locked in a small room. How fast can we move on this? I'm drafting an emergency custody petition right now. With Dr. Martinez's report and the medical records, we can get both kids removed from Mary's custody by tomorrow. What about criminal charges? That's up to the prosecutor. But with this much evidence, I'd say she's looking at serious prison time. Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. What do you need from me? Keep documenting everything. Get Dr. Martinez's report and prepare Oliver for what's coming. This is going to get ugly fast. I'll be ready. As Daniel hung up, he heard Naomi talking to Dr. Martinez about the grading system Mary had taught her. The clinical way she described watching her brother hurt himself made Daniel's stomach turn, but also made him more determined than ever to make sure Mary paid for what she'd done. Daniel parked outside Preston's pharmacy at 8 in the morning, watching through the window as the pharmacist unlocked the front door. He'd been up all night reading Dr. Chen's preliminary report, and the details made him want to put his fist through a wall. The pharmacist was a thin man in his 50s with careful eyes and the kind of precise manner that came from years of handling controlled substances. His name tag read, Robert Preston, PharmD. Can I help you? Daniel pulled out his identification and guardianship papers. I'm Daniel Ridgway. I'm the legal guardian for Oliver Ridgway, age 13. Preston examined the papers carefully. What can I do for you, Mr. Ridgway? I need to know about prescriptions filled for Oliver over the past 3 years. Specifically, any medications for anxiety or depression. I'll need to look that up. May I ask why? I have reason to believe his mother was medicating him without proper medical supervision. Preston's expression grew serious. That's a serious allegation. Are you working with law enforcement? With my attorney. We're building a case for child abuse. I see. Let me check our records. Preston disappeared into the back room, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts. Through the window, he could see the elementary school where Oliver and Naomi attended classes. How many people had seen signs of abuse and said nothing? Mr. Ridgway. Daniel turned. Preston was holding a computer printout, his face pale. I found several prescriptions for Oliver Ridgway, all filled by Mary Ridgway, listed as his mother. What medications? Clonazepam, primarily. Also some prescriptions for sleep aids and antidepressants. Are these appropriate medications for a 13-year-old? Not in these dosages. These are adult doses. And clonazepam is rarely prescribed for children except in very specific circumstances. Daniel felt his anger building. Who wrote the prescriptions? That's the problem. They're all written by Dr. Marcus Webb, but Dr. Webb retired 2 years ago. And according to his former office, these prescription numbers don't match their records. So they're fake. I believe so. The prescription pads appear to be legitimate, but the numbers don't match the doctor's records. Daniel pulled out his phone and called Kendra. I'm at the pharmacy. We've got prescription fraud. How extensive? 3 years of fake prescriptions. All for adult doses of anxiety medication. That's a federal crime. I'm calling the FBI. What do you need from me? Get copies of everything. And ask the pharmacist if he's willing to testify. Daniel looked at Preston, who was still staring at the computer printout. Mr. Preston, would you be willing to testify about these prescriptions in court? Against Mary Ridgway? Absolutely. I should have caught this sooner. Why didn't you? She was spreading them across multiple pharmacies. We don't have a centralized database for controlled substances, so each pharmacy was only seeing a small piece of the pattern. How many other pharmacies? Based on the dates, I guess at least 4 or 5. She was rotating them to avoid suspicion. Daniel's phone rang. Kendra, I just got off the phone with the prosecutor's office. They're opening a criminal investigation. They want to interview Oliver and Naomi today. Are the kids ready for that? Dr. Chen thinks so. She's been preparing them for the possibility of having to testify. What about Mary? Does she know we're investigating? Not yet, but she will soon. I'm filing the custody petition this afternoon. Daniel watched Preston make copies of the prescription records. How long before she's arrested? Could be as soon as tomorrow. The prosecutor is treating this as a priority case. Good. Daniel, there's something else. I got a call from Oliver's school. Apparently, Mary has been telling them that Oliver has severe behavioral problems and that she's been homeschooling him part-time to deal with his issues. What kind of issues? Self-harm, lying, inappropriate sexual behavior. Daniel felt his blood pressure spike. She was setting up a cover story. Exactly. She's been documenting Oliver's problems for years, probably in case anyone ever questioned her treatment methods. What does the school say? They say Oliver is quiet but well-behaved. No behavioral problems. No issues with other students. So she was lying to them too. She was creating a paper trail to support her version of events. But it's going to backfire on her in court. Daniel took the copies from Preston and headed for the door. I'm going home to talk to Oliver. He needs to know what's coming. Be gentle with him. This is going to be traumatic. More traumatic than burning himself with rubbing alcohol every night. Point taken. As Daniel drove home, he thought about the conversation he was about to have with Oliver. The boy had been making progress, taking real showers and eating regular meals. But he still flinched at unexpected sounds, and he still wore long sleeves to hide his scars. It was time to tell him that his mother wasn't just wrong about the cleaning ritual. She was a criminal who had been systematically abusing him for years, and it was time to prepare him for the fight that was coming. The courtroom smelled like old wood and broken dreams. Daniel sat beside Kendra at the plaintiff's table, watching Mary enter with her attorney. She looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile, like a woman who had been caught in a lie and was trying to figure out how to talk her way out of it. Her attorney was a sharp-dressed man named Mitchell Kane, who specialized in defending difficult cases. He had the kind of smooth confidence that came from years of making juries believe black was white. Your Honor, Kane said, standing to address the judge. My client is here today to seek custody of her children, who were taken from her home without proper legal process. Judge Patricia Hawkins, a stern woman in her 60s, looked down at the papers in front of her. Mr. Kane, this is a hearing on emergency custody petition filed by Mr. Ridgway. Your client is the respondent. Yes, Your Honor. But we believe this entire proceeding is based on false allegations made by a traumatized child who has been coached to lie about his mother. Kendra stood up. Objection, Your Honor. There's no evidence that Oliver Ridgway has been coached to lie about anything. Overruled. Mr. Kane, you'll have an opportunity to present your case. Ms. Alcott, please proceed with your opening statement. Kendra walked to the center of the courtroom, her movements confident and deliberate. Your Honor, this case is about systematic child abuse disguised as medical treatment. Over the past 3 years, Mary Ridgway has been forcing her 13-year-old son Oliver to burn his own skin with rubbing alcohol, while convincing him that normal adolescent feelings were signs of spiritual contamination. Mary leaned forward and whispered something to her attorney. Daniel watched her face, looking for signs of guilt or remorse. Instead, he saw calculation. The evidence will show, Kendra continued, that Mrs. Ridgway has been medicating Oliver with powerful anti-anxiety drugs obtained through prescription fraud. She has been using her 11-year-old daughter Naomi as a monitor to ensure that Oliver was inflicting enough pain on himself to meet her standards of cleanliness. Objection, Kane said. Inflammatory language. Overruled. Continue, Ms. Alcott. The evidence will also show that Oliver's father, James Ridgway, was aware of this abuse and was planning to remove his children from Mary's custody when he died under suspicious circumstances. Daniel saw Mary's jaw tighten. This was the first time anyone had suggested publicly that James's death wasn't accidental. Your Honor, Kendra said, holding up a thick folder. We have medical records, pharmacy records, witness testimony, and physical evidence that paint a clear picture of deliberate, systematic abuse. She walked back to the table and picked up a photograph. This is Oliver's arm, taken 4 days ago. These are chemical burns, inflicted over a period of years, in a deliberate pattern. Judge Hawkins examined the photograph, her expression growing darker. Mr. Kane, how does your client explain these injuries? Your Honor, Oliver Ridgway suffers from a severe self-harm disorder. My client has been working with medical professionals to help him overcome his compulsive behavior. What medical professionals? Kane shuffled through his papers. Dr. Elizabeth Crenshaw, a licensed therapist who has been treating Oliver for lying and self-harm behaviors. Kendra stood up. Your Honor, we contacted Dr. Crenshaw's office. She has no record of treating Oliver Ridgway. Is that true, Mr. Kane? We're having difficulty locating Dr. Crenshaw's records. Judge Hawkins leaned forward. Are you telling me that Dr. Crenshaw doesn't exist? No, Your Honor. We're simply having difficulty verifying her credentials. I see. Ms. Alcott, please call your first witness. The state calls Dr. Sarah Chun. Dr. Chun took the stand with the same calm professionalism she'd shown at the cabin. She testified about her interviews with both Oliver and Naomi, describing in clinical detail the systematic nature of the abuse. In my professional opinion, Dr. Chun said, Oliver Ridgway has been the victim of severe psychological and physical abuse. His mother has used religious and medical terminology to convince him that normal adolescent development is evidence of spiritual contamination. And what about Naomi? Kendra asked. Naomi has been forced to participate in her brother's abuse. She has been trained to evaluate whether Oliver has inflicted enough pain on himself to meet her mother's standards. In your opinion, is this therapeutic treatment? Absolutely not. This is systematic abuse designed to control and terrorize a child. Kane's cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. Dr. Chun had documented everything carefully, and her testimony was unshakable. Dr. Chun, Kane said, isn't it possible that Oliver's injuries are self-inflicted? That he's been harming himself and blaming his mother? Mr. Kane, I've worked with self-harm cases for 15 years. Children who cut or burn themselves typically do so in hidden areas and in random patterns. Oliver's injuries are visible, systematic, and follow a deliberate protocol that he could describe in detail. But couldn't he have developed this protocol himself? A 10-year-old child doesn't develop a complex ritual involving medical terminology and religious concepts without adult guidance. Kendra called Oliver to the stand next. The boy walked to the witness box with his head down, his sleeves pulled down to cover his scars. Oliver, Kendra said gently, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the judge about the cleaning ritual. Oliver's voice was barely audible. Every night before bed, I had to clean myself. How did you clean yourself? With cotton balls and rubbing alcohol. Mom said soap wouldn't clean the sin out of boys. What sin? The sin that comes from thinking bad thoughts about girls. Daniel watched Mary's face. She was staring at Oliver with an expression of barely controlled rage. Who taught you to use rubbing alcohol? Kendra asked. Mom. She said it was the only way to burn the filth out completely. And what happened if you didn't clean yourself? The sin would spread. It would get in the air and make other people sick. Oliver's testimony lasted an hour. He described the grading system, the locked bathroom, the medications that made him feel sleepy and confused. With each revelation, Judge Hawkins's expression grew more severe. Kane's cross-examination was brief. Oliver, do you love your mother? Yes. And you know she was trying to help you. I thought she was. But Uncle Dan says she was hurting me. And you believe your uncle? Yes. Even though he's not your real father. Oliver looked confused. He takes care of me. He doesn't make me hurt myself. No further questions. Kendra called Robert Preston, the pharmacist who testified about the fraudulent prescriptions. She called Oliver's teachers, who testified about Mary's false claims regarding his behavior. She called Detective Morrison, who testified about the suspicious circumstances surrounding James's death. By the end of the day, the evidence was overwhelming. Mary had been systematically abusing Oliver while creating a false medical history to cover her tracks. Mr. Kane, Judge Hawkins said, does your client wish to testify? Yes, Your Honor. Mary took the stand wearing a dark blue dress and a carefully composed expression. She looked like a grieving mother who had been wrongly accused. Mrs. Ridgway, Kane said, please tell the court about your son's condition. Oliver has always been a troubled child. He started hurting himself when he was very young, and I've been trying to help him ever since. How did you help him? I researched his condition extensively. I found that some children benefit from controlled exposure to mild discomfort as a way of managing their self-harm impulses. Daniel felt his hands clench in a fist. Even now, she was trying to make abuse sound like therapy. And medications. Oliver was prescribed those medications by Dr. Webb. I was simply following his treatment plan. Mrs. Ridgway, Kendra said during cross-examination, Dr. Webb retired 2 years ago. How were you getting prescriptions from a retired doctor? I had leftover prescription pads from his office. You had leftover prescription pads? Yes. He gave them to me before he retired. Mrs. Ridgway, isn't it true that you stole those prescription pads? Objection. Sustained. Mrs. Ridgway, you testified that Oliver was prescribed these medications by Dr. Webb. But Oliver was only 10 years old when you started giving him clonazepam. Do you really expect us to believe that a doctor prescribed adult doses of powerful anti-anxiety medication to a 10-year-old child? Mary's composure cracked slightly. He was a very troubled child, so troubled that he needed to be medicated into compliance while you forced him to burn himself with rubbing alcohol. I was trying to help him by making him believe that normal feelings were sin, by teaching him self-control. Mrs. Ridgway, you forced your 11-year-old daughter to participate in your son's abuse. You made her grade his injuries to ensure he was inflicting enough pain on himself. How is that helping anyone? Mary looked at her attorney, panic flashing across her face. I was teaching both of my children about cleanliness and self-discipline. You were teaching them that love involves pain and that they couldn't trust their own feelings. Objection. Sustained. But the damage was done. Mary had revealed herself as someone who could rationalize anything, who could make abuse sound like love with the right words. Mrs. Ridgway, Kendra said, do you still believe that Oliver needs to burn himself with rubbing alcohol? I believe Oliver needs structure and discipline. That's not what I asked. Do you still believe he needs to burn himself? Mary stared at Kendra for a long moment. I believe children need to learn that actions have consequences, including the consequence of chemical burns, including the consequence of understanding that cleanliness is important. Judge Hawkins leaned forward. Mrs. Ridgway, are you saying that you would continue this treatment if the children were returned to your custody? I would continue to teach my children about cleanliness and self-discipline, yes. Even if it meant more injuries, even if it meant proper moral development. The courtroom fell silent. Mary had just admitted that she would continue abusing Oliver if given the chance. Your Honor, Kendra said, the petitioner rests. Mary walked out of the courthouse with her head held high, her attorney beside her whispering urgent instructions. Daniel watched from the steps as she headed toward the parking garage, her heels clicking on the concrete. She made it about 50 feet before two men in dark suits stepped out from behind a van. Mary Ridgway. She stopped, her hand tightening on her purse. Yes, FBI. You're under arrest for prescription fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The first agent, a tall man with gray hair, pulled out his handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Mary's composure finally cracked. This is insane. I was trying to help my son. Ma'am, you need to put your hands behind your back. I want to call my lawyer. You can call him from the station. Daniel felt a grim satisfaction as he watched Mary being led away in handcuffs. Behind him, Oliver and Naomi stood with Dr. Martinez, watching their mother's arrest with expressions of confusion and relief. Is she going to jail? Naomi asked. For a long time, Daniel said. What about us? You're staying with me. The second FBI agent, a younger woman with sharp eyes, approached Daniel. Mr. Ridgway? I'm Agent Martinez. We'll need to interview the children again for the federal case. They've been through enough. I understand. But prescription fraud is a federal crime, and we need their testimony to make sure she serves serious time. Daniel looked at Oliver, who was staring at the van where his mother had been taken. Are you okay, kid? I think so. It's just weird seeing her in handcuffs. She hurt you for years. She deserves to be in handcuffs. Oliver nodded, but Daniel could see the conflict in his eyes. Despite everything Mary had done, she was still his mother. Agent Martinez, Daniel said, can this wait until next week? These kids need time to process what just happened. Of course. We'll be in touch. As the FBI van drove away, Daniel put his arms around Oliver and Naomi. Come on, let's go home. Uncle Dan, Oliver said. Yeah, what happens now? Now we start figuring out how to be a family. 2 days later, Daniel got a call from Detective Morrison. We arrested Charles Brennan this morning. Who? Chaz, Mary's boyfriend. Turns out he's been helping her cash in on James's life insurance. Daniel felt his anger flare. How much? $200,000. He was listed as a co-beneficiary. For what? Apparently, Mary convinced the insurance company that he was James's business partner. They've been splitting the money and using it to fund their lifestyle. Jesus Christ. Gets better. We found evidence that Mary was planning to claim Oliver was mentally incompetent so she could control any inheritance money that came his way. She was going to have him declared incompetent. She'd been building a case for years. All those fake medical records, all the documentation of his behavioral problems. She was setting up a guardianship claim. Daniel sat down heavily. So she was abusing him and planning to steal his inheritance. That's what it looks like. Chaz is cooperating with the investigation. He's given us detailed information about Mary's plans. What's he saying? He's saying Mary told him that Oliver was so damaged by his condition that he'd never be able to function as an adult. She was planning to have him institutionalized once he turned 18. Daniel felt sick. She was going to put him in a mental hospital. That was the plan. Keep him medicated and controllable until he was old enough to be committed permanently. And Naomi, she was going to use Naomi as a witness to Oliver's incompetence. Train her to testify that her brother was dangerous and unstable. Daniel hung up the phone and sat in his kitchen, staring at the wall. Mary hadn't just been abusing Oliver. She'd been systematically destroying his future, but she'd failed. Oliver was safe now, and he was getting stronger every day. The burns on his arms were healing, and he was learning to trust his own feelings again. Mary was going to spend the next 20 years in federal prison, and Daniel was going to make sure that Oliver and Naomi grew up knowing they were love points 6 months later. Daniel stood in the renovated guest house, watching Oliver sand down a wooden beam. The boy had grown 3 inches and put on 20 pounds since coming to live with him. His arms were still scarred, but he no longer tried to hide them. Looking good, kid. Oliver looked up, his face streaked with sawdust. Thanks. I think I'm getting the hang of this. You're a natural. Your dad would be proud. Yeah, I think he would. Naomi came running in from the main house, her hair flying behind her. Uncle Dan, the lawyer's on the phone. Daniel walked to the house and picked up the phone. Kendra, Daniel, I have news. Mary just accepted a plea deal. What kind of deal? 25 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 15 years. Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. And Chaz, 10 years. He's already been sentenced. Good. There's more. The judge terminated Mary's parental rights. The adoption papers are ready for your signature. Daniel looked out the window at Oliver and Naomi, who are now working together to move a heavy board. When can we make it official? Tomorrow if you want. I can have the papers filed by noon. Do it. That evening, Daniel sat on his porch with Oliver and Naomi, watching the sunset paint the mountains orange and gold. They'd been through hell together, but they'd come out stronger. Uncle Dan, Oliver said, yeah, I've been thinking about what Mom used to say, about the sin spreading through the air. Daniel tensed. What about it? I think maybe she was right about something spreading, but it wasn't sin. What was it? Love. I think love spreads through the air. Because ever since I came here, I can feel it getting stronger. Daniel put his arm around Oliver's shoulders. You know what? I think you're right. Naomi curled up against Daniel's other side. Are we really going to be a family? We already are a family. Tomorrow we're just going to make it official. What if Mom comes back? She won't. She can't. She's going to be in prison for a very long time. Good, Oliver said. Because I don't want to be clean anymore. I want to be dirty like normal kids. Daniel laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. Oliver, you could be as dirty as you want. You can roll in mud and play in the dirt and track everything through the house. Really, really, being dirty is part of being a kid. Oliver grinned, the first genuine smile Daniel had seen from him. Then I'm going to be the dirtiest kid in the world. I'm going to hold you to that. As the stars came out, Daniel thought about James and the voicemail he'd left all those months ago. His brother had been trying to protect his children, and he died before he could save them. But Daniel had finished what James started. He'd built a case against Mary brick by brick, using every legal tool available. He'd exposed her lies, documented her crimes, and made sure she could never hurt another child. Most importantly, he'd given Oliver and Naomi something they'd never had before, a home where they were loved unconditionally. You fix what she broke, Oliver had said, but Daniel knew the truth. Oliver had fixed himself. Daniel had just handed him the hammer.